Hello everybody, Brenton here to take you through the newest, or one of the newest, of the SAP Fiori application sets. Perhaps the one you all have been waiting for, the My Travel and Expenses application. Now this has been released in the past 3 to 4 weeks. We saw glimmers, or at least glimpses of it, at SAP TechEd Las Vegas this year, but now I can officially tell you it is out and about and ready to be used. So I'm looking here at the SAP Fiori catalog, which shows us all the information about the various applications. You'll see here I've searched for travel, and I've selected my travel and expenses. Of course, there are other complementary applications as well, along with travel and expenses. For example, your travel requests, approving those requests, and approving the expenses themselves. But for the purpose of this screencast, I'm going to focus on the My Travel and Expenses application. And without further ado, here's what it looks like. So here we've got the standard application with no customization at all on top of it, looking at my employee, where I have one trip set up, which is Bluefin trip to Chiswick. So here on the right hand side you can see I've got my trip number, from and to dates and times. I've got a destination, and in fact I can add other destinations if I wanted to. And I've got purpose and comment. Now the really nice thing about this is that this is all driven by the configuration that you would have set up within your SAP HR system. So therefore, if you've customized it so that certain fields appear or do not appear on your WebDim Pro or on your PRO5 or TRIP versions of travel expenses, that will be mimicked here. You've also got your cost assignment here. You see I've got all my assignments going to Blue HR, but I could quite easily click to go in and add any other cost center I wanted to add. So I can actually distribute the costs of my travel and expense claim throughout multiple cost centers. Next, we've got attachments. So everybody will be glad to hear that the application itself supports full attachments. So you can upload from both mobile devices and from desktop applications, and you can actually click in and view what those attachments are as well at your leisure. In this case, I've uploaded a globe. You can also, as I mentioned, attach here, so I can hit plus, and then it would immediately allow me to attach something else to upload. Next, of course, the most important part, we've got our expenses. Now, the one big difference you'll see with this application that you may not have seen with other expense applications is that mileage has finally started to be considered an expense. So previously, if you looked in PRO5 or WebDim Pro, you would do mileage as a completely separate entity away from your receipts and your expenses. But that's not the case with the Fiori application. So you'll see here under my expenses, I've got a standard entry for mileage. And if I drill into this, it'll take a couple of seconds to load, then you'll see, I can change the distance, I can put in date, from and to, country, per diem region, and all this kind of stuff, including comments and vehicle information. I can also manage the cost assignment from within each expense itself, which is quite a nice feature as well if you ended up splitting one expense over multiple cost centers. To add an expense is quite simple, so I'll go back to the main menu and I hit add expense. And immediately fairly immediately, I'm brought up with a list of the expense types that I can use to actually add my expenses. So let's wait for this to load. There we go. Okay, so we've got our expenses. So I've got all of my flights, entertainments, all the standard expense types. And again, because this is driven from the configuration you would use for your normal expense entry, any new expense types that you have put in, Z expenses and all that kind of stuff will also be shown up here. So let's add a breakfast. So I could add multiples here, or I could just add the one. So I could say actually 2 breakfasts or 3 breakfasts. So I'm just going to go with 1 and hit OK. And it'll bring me into the configuration-driven expense entry form for that expense type. So in this case, you'll see when it loads, I got my amount. So let's say I'm going to say that's it was an expensive breakfast. It was steak, so it's £35. I've got my VAT entries. I can say okay, the location. I'm going to say I had my breakfast at the Hilton Hotel. So Hilton Hotel. I don't necessarily need to populate the rest of these. A good description and my amazing comment. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I actually could distribute the cost assignment for this particular expense across multiple multiple cost centers if I wanted to. And I could add attendees or attachments. Now in this case, this system that I'm working on doesn't have formal attendees set up, so it's not going to allow me. but I could also put attachments specifically on the line item as well, which is a very nice feature. Now, there isn't necessarily a save button here, which is the one unusual thing I found about this expense entry area. So to actually save it, I just go back and it'll add it to my expense claim, and all of my totals and whatnot will be updated. Now, based on the fact that mileage and certain currency conversions have to be done on the server, it doesn't immediately always show you the total reimbursement amount, and that becomes more important as well when you're dealing with credit card feeds and whatnot. So if I do calculate amount, it will now go off back to the server and figure out exactly how much this trip is going to cost, or how much I will be reimbursed. So that's it for travel and expense entry for SAP Fiori. There are other options as well, which I'm not going to go through around, exporting as a PDF, saving specific expenses as a tile and whatnot, or duplicating, and all the standard functionality you would see here. That's a brief overview of the expense entry application itself. And we're now going to submit this expense claim, and just to show you what the submission button looks like. So in a couple of seconds now, we'll get the nice little declaration and the total for the expense entry. So while that's loading, oh, there it is. So I've got a summary of my report, how much I'm going to get back, and then I've got the declaration as well, which is again driven by configuration, so I could change that if I wanted to. Now, the one thing to mention about this SAP Fiori My Travel and Expense application is the requirements for actually installing it. This is the one downside I feel with the actual application itself. So in order to actually have this in place, you need the back-end components that come with Enhancement Pack 7 of ERP. So you do need ERP Enhancement Pack 7 in place before you can install the back-end components. And you can see that here, and it's EAHR607 is the exact software component that you're looking for within your system. On the front end, literally all we need is our standard SAP Gateway implementation running the latest versions of SAP UI 5 and Gateway. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So that's it for a quick overview of the SAP Fiori My Travel and Expenses application. Please do let me know if you want any more information, and I will post as such. Thanks very much.